Hello, gentle listener. Welcome to Pets for Sleep. Whether you are returning tonight or finding this quiet corner for the first time, this is a place to slow down, learn something gentle about the animals we love, and let the day gradually soften around you. A few minutes before the alarm sounds, a cat may already be awake. Its ears lift first, then its eyes open, its paws stretch forward, and it quietly steps across the bed, as though it has been waiting for this moment. In another home, a cat may be sitting beside the kitchen cupboard before anyone has reached for the food. These moments can make it seem as though cats know the time. They cannot read the numbers on a clock, and there is no evidence that they understand 7 o'clock in the human sense. The important difference is the space between reacting and anticipating. A cat that runs into the kitchen after hearing a food container open is reacting to a clear sound. A cat that is already waiting before the container moves is doing something more interesting. Its behavior has begun before the most obvious signal. If you enjoy these quiet journeys through the lives of animals, you are welcome to subscribe. And if it feels natural, to leave a comment sharing where you are listening from tonight. It helps other gentle listeners find this calm corner, one sleepy animal story at a time. Scientists can measure this kind of early behavior. In feeding studies, cats have worn small activity monitors that record movement throughout the day. Researchers can then examine what happens during the 2 hours before a scheduled meal. When activity rises before the food arrives, it is called food anticipatory activity. The phrase means that the animal becomes more active, while an expected meal is still in the future. That does not mean every trip to the food bowl is guided by a perfect inner clock. A cat may be responding to several clues at once. Morning light may be reaching the window. A heating system may have switched on. Birds may be calling outside. The person in bed may be shifting beneath the blankets. Hunger may also be building inside the cat's body. Each clue alone may be uncertain. Together, they can make the coming event easier to predict. The same process can happen in the evening. A laptop closes. Water runs in the bathroom. A lamp is switched off. The cat has experienced this order many times, and the first event may begin preparing it for the last. A routine is therefore more than one habit repeated each day. It is a chain of events that usually unfolds in a familiar order. Some parts of that chain come from the outside world. Others come from changes inside the body. A cat may learn the sound of a cupboard, the footsteps of one person, the light at a certain window, and the feeling of hunger that appears around the same part of the day. None of these signals needs to be exact. They only need to be reliable often enough for learning to occur. This also explains why a cat can sometimes appear early. Prediction is not the same as certainty. Waiting 10 minutes before breakfast may cost very little, while arriving late could mean losing the best position beside the bowl. For a small hunter, being prepared before something happens can be more useful than responding after it has begun. The cat beside the bed, then, may not be counting minutes. It may be reading changes that humans barely notice. The room is brighter. The house sounds different. Its body feels different. The person nearby has begun making the tiny movements that usually come before waking. What looks like one mysterious talent may actually be several ordinary abilities working together. There is an internal daily rhythm. There are learned sounds, smells, places, and movements. There is memory for the order in which events usually occur. And there is the cat's long history of watching the same household repeat itself, morning after morning. Before we can understand why cats become attached to routine, we first have to understand what a routine truly is from the cat's point of view. It is not a number on a clock. It is the familiar shape of the day beginning to appear. Human time is built from numbers. 7 o'clock has a fixed place on a clock face, and 7:15 arrives exactly 15 minutes later. A cat has no need for that kind of symbolic system. There is no strong evidence that cats understand clock faces, numbered hours, or the idea that a certain position of the hands represents breakfast. Their timing can still appear remarkably precise because a home offers many other ways to measure the progress of a day. For a cat, a routine is a repeating relationship among sensations, places, actions, and results. A patch of sunlight reaches the bedroom wall. An alarm begins to sound. The person under the blankets moves an arm, sits up, and places both feet on the floor. A bathroom door opens. Water runs through the pipes. Footsteps cross the hallway and enter the kitchen. A cupboard opens. A bowl touches the counter, and food finally appears. These events rarely occur at random. They form an order that may repeat hundreds of times during a single year. Each repetition gives the cat another opportunity to learn which event usually comes before another. Several different timing systems can take part in that learning. The first is a circadian rhythm. The word circadian refers to a biological cycle lasting close to 24 hours. Sleepiness, activity, appetite, hormone release, and body temperature can all rise or fall according to these internal daily patterns. A cat may therefore become more prepared to wake or eat during a familiar part of the day, even before a clear household sound appears. A second layer comes from associative learning. This happens when one event gains meaning because it repeatedly predicts another. The click of a particular cupboard may begin as an ordinary sound. After enough mornings in which that click is followed by food, it becomes useful information. The sound now suggests that eating is likely to happen soon. The third layer is an event sequence. Several cues occur in a dependable order, allowing the cat to respond before the final outcome arrives. The alarm may predict movement from the bed. Movement may predict the bathroom door. The bathroom door may predict footsteps toward the kitchen. By the time the cupboard opens, the cat may already be waiting nearby. The earlier events usually carry less certainty than the later ones. An alarm can sound on a day when the person stays in bed. Footsteps can enter the kitchen without food being prepared. A cupboard can open because someone needs a glass. Each clue still contributes information. As matching clues gather, the familiar outcome becomes more likely. Scientists sometimes describe this kind of process in terms of probability. Probability means the chance that something will happen. A single signal may raise that chance slightly. Several signals arriving in the usual order can raise it much more. This also explains why a cat can keep its routine when one part of the sequence disappears. A power failure may silence the alarm clock. Morning light still enters the room. The person still begins to move. Hunger may have been building for several hours. These overlapping signals create cue redundancy. Cue redundancy means that more than one clue provides similar information. The system remains useful even when one clue is missing or delayed. Different cats may depend on different parts of the same routine. One may respond strongly to the alarm. Another may remain curled up until it hears the bedroom door. A third may appear only after footsteps reach the kitchen floor. Past experience determines which cue has proved most dependable for each animal. The cat's apparent punctuality therefore grows from a prediction system built through repetition. It does not require counting minutes or understanding the meaning of 7 o'clock. The day announces its progress through changes the cat can detect, remember, and compare with what has happened before. Many of those signals come from the surrounding room. The earliest shift, however, may begin inside the cat's body before the house has made a sound. Long before breakfast reaches the bowl, several processes inside the cat have already begun to shift. Sleep becomes lighter during some parts of the day and deeper during others. Appetite rises and falls. Levels of movement change, while body temperature follows its own daily pattern. These changes form part of an internal timing system shared by mammals, including humans, dogs, mice, and domestic cats. Near the center of this system is a small region of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. The name sounds complicated, although its location helps explain it. This group of nerve cells sits inside the hypothalamus, a brain region involved in sleep, appetite, temperature, and hormone control. It lies directly above the place where the two optic nerves cross on their way back from the eyes. After this first introduction, it is easier to think of it as the brain's central daily clock. The structure is tiny compared with the whole brain. Its cells still help coordinate rhythms across many organs and tissues. Within those cells, certain genes become active and produce proteins. Those proteins gradually build up, affect the same genes that produce them, and then break down. The cycle begins again after roughly 24 hours. Electrical activity also changes as the cells move through this repeating process. Signals from the central clock help organize when the cat is more likely to sleep, become active, seek food, or experience small changes in body temperature. This system does not count minutes in the way a stopwatch does. It creates broad periods of readiness across the day. A cat may therefore become easier to wake near its usual morning activity period. Several hours later, the same animal may settle into a longer stretch of rest. Researchers were measuring these patterns in cats decades before activity collars became common. In a 1986 experiment, adult cats lived under controlled cycles of light and darkness. The researchers later placed them in prolonged darkness, removing the regular arrival of daylight as an immediate guide. Sleep and brain temperature continued to change in daily rhythms. The pattern included a broad increase in nighttime activity, along with two smaller peaks connected to the parts of the cycle that normally fell near dawn and dusk. The continued rhythm in darkness was important. It showed that the timing pattern was being produced within the animal, rather than being recreated from scratch whenever a lamp switched on. Another study continuously observed 8 adult cats while recording their sleep, waking behavior, and electrical brain activity. The cats experienced 14 hours of light, followed by 10 hours of dim conditions during each daily cycle. Electrodes allowed researchers to distinguish waking from different forms of sleep by examining brain waves, eye movements, and muscle activity. Across the full day, sleep was distributed unevenly. The cats moved through repeated sleeping and waking periods, while the likelihood of each state changed according to the time within the daily cycle. This helps explain why cats can sleep for many separate periods instead of taking one long block of sleep. Shorter cycles of rest occur within the larger 24-hour rhythm. The central clock supplies broad timing, while other brain systems respond to hunger, recent activity, comfort, sound, and safety. A cat disturbed by a noise can wake during a usual rest period. An exciting play session can temporarily increase activity. Even with these interruptions, the underlying rhythm continues to influence which behaviors are most likely at different times. The owner's routine therefore joins a biological schedule already in progress. Morning footsteps may become meaningful partly because the cat's body is approaching a familiar active period. A food cue can become more powerful when appetite is rising at the same time. Internal timing alone remains too broad to explain why the cat waits beside one particular cupboard. The brain's central daily clock may prepare the animal for morning without identifying which room contains breakfast. That level of precision requires information from the surrounding environment. An internal rhythm can continue through darkness for a time, although it slowly loses perfect alignment without regular correction. Sunrise shifts through the seasons. Household activity changes from one day to another. To stay matched with the outside world, the clock inside the cat needs signals that tell it when a new day has truly begun. Morning light begins as a change outside the window. The sky brightens gradually, and pale light reaches the surfaces inside the room. Some of that light enters the cat's eyes and falls on the retina, the thin layer of light-sensitive tissue at the back of each eye. The retina helps create vision, yet it also performs another task. Special light-sensitive cells send information about brightness toward the brain's timing system. This pathway can influence the daily clock even when the cat is resting and has no reason to study the objects around it. The brain receives a simple but valuable message about the changing environment. Daylight is arriving. Scientists use the German word Zeitgeber for an outside signal that adjusts an internal biological rhythm. The word means time giver. Light is the strongest natural Zeitgeber for most mammals because sunrise and sunset return with dependable regularity. They also move slowly through the calendar. In much of the northern hemisphere, sunrise arrives earlier as spring moves towards summer. The pattern reverses through autumn, and winter brings shorter days with longer periods of darkness. An internal clock running entirely on its own would drift slightly away from these changes. Daily exposure to light corrects the drift through a process called entrainment. Entrainment keeps biological time aligned with environmental time. The existing rhythm continues inside the body, while each new period of light gently adjusts its position. A cat living indoors still receives this information. Windows reveal the arrival of dawn, the fading of evening, and the difference between a clear morning and a heavily clouded one. A sunlit patch may cross the floor earlier in June than it does in December. Artificial lamps can alter the pattern, especially in homes where lights remain on late at night, though they do not erase every signal coming from outside. Researchers have measured seasonal changes in cats living indoors under natural daylight. One study followed 6 cats for 3 weeks during each of the 4 seasons. Their movement and feeding were recorded around the clock, allowing the researchers to compare winter, spring, summer, and autumn. The cats continued to show rhythms close to 24 hours in every season. Their schedules remained organized even as the amount and timing of daylight changed. The distance they traveled each day also varied across the year. Daily movement was greatest during spring and autumn. Winter produced the lowest average distance. The exact timing of spontaneous activity and feeding peaks shifted along with seasonal twilight. Morning and evening changes in natural light helped move the broader pattern earlier or later. This did not create 4 completely different cats across 4 seasons. The same animals kept recognizable daily rhythms while adjusting their timing to the changing light around them. Human contact added another clear influence. When caretakers entered, handled the cats, or provided food, movement and eating increased at recognizable times. That pattern appeared in every season. The cats were therefore responding to 2 forms of timing information at once. Natural light gave the day its broad frame. Human activity placed more precise events within that frame. A winter morning might remain dark when a person begins preparing food. During summer, daylight may have been entering the room for an hour before the same household event occurs. Over repeated days, the cat can learn how these signals usually fit together. Light may indicate that morning is approaching. Footsteps and kitchen sounds narrow the timing further. Hunger adds information from inside the body. The combined pattern allows the cat to remain flexible when one cue shifts. Daylight saving time can move a human's schedule by 1 hour in a single night. Sunrise changes more gradually, and the cat's internal rhythm may take time to adjust. This helps explain why some cats continue appearing at the old meal time for several mornings after a clock change. Their daily system is receiving signals that no longer agree perfectly. Repeated exposure slowly brings those signals back into alignment. What appears to be a private routine between one cat and one person is therefore connected to a much larger cycle. The rotation of Earth changes the light outside the window. The seasons alter the length and timing of that light. The cat's eyes carry part of that information into the brain, where the daily clock is adjusted again. The sharpest natural transitions occur around dawn and dusk. Those 2 periods held special value for small feline hunters, long before cupboards, alarm clocks, and indoor feeding schedules became part of their lives. As daylight changes, a cat's activity often changes with it. This has helped create the common idea that cats are nocturnal animals. Many cats do become active after dark, especially when a quiet home offers open rooms and fewer interruptions. A fully nocturnal animal, however, would place most of its activity deep within the night. Domestic cats often follow a more flexible pattern. Their movement commonly rises during the morning and again during the evening. Scientists describe a daily rhythm with 2 recurring peaks as bimodal. The word simply means that the pattern has 2 high points instead of 1. Researchers documented this in 2019 while observing 14 indoor cats around the clock. Each cat carried a small electronic tag. Radio frequency identification confirmed which animal approached the feeding station. Electronic scales measured how much food disappeared. An ultra-wideband tracking system calculated where the cats moved within the indoor space. The tracking continued through daylight and darkness. allowing the researchers to compare every hour of the day. Movement and feeding both followed patterns close to 24 hours. Across the study, each cat traveled an average of about 1.74 kilometers per day. That distance is a little more than 1 mile, accumulated through many short trips between resting places, feeding stations, and other parts of the room. The cats consumed an average of about 46.4 grams of dry food each day. That food supplied approximately 179 kilocalories. Their strongest recurring periods of movement and eating appeared during the morning and evening. Activity dropped most clearly around midday and again during the middle of the night. This two-peaked pattern described the group better than a simple label such as daytime or nighttime animal. The results also showed considerable variation among individual cats. One animal might become active earlier than another. Some cats traveled farther, while others spent more time resting. Age, health, previous experience, temperament, and social relationships can all influence the exact shape of a daily rhythm. The broad pattern still reveals why dawn and dusk are important periods for many members of the species. Wildcat ancestors survived as small predators. Their prey included rodents, young rabbits, reptiles, and small birds, depending on the habitat. Many rodents become active when daylight is weak. Birds often begin moving and calling near sunrise. These changes create brief windows when prey activity rises. Twilight also gives a cat useful visual conditions. A cat's retina contains many rod cells, which are especially sensitive to low levels of light. Behind the retina is a reflective layer called the tapetum lucidum. Light that passes through the retina can reflect back through it, giving the light-sensitive cells another chance to respond. This contributes to the bright eyeshine seen when light reaches a cat's eyes in darkness. Low light can therefore remain useful to a feline hunter. Twilight may also reduce daytime heat in warm regions. The African wildcat, one of the domestic cat's closest ancestors, developed in landscapes where avoiding the hottest hours could save water and energy. Activity near sunrise and sunset offered cooler conditions, while still providing enough light for careful movement. These inherited tendencies remain flexible. A pet cat does not need to hunt for every meal, and indoor temperatures may stay nearly constant throughout the day. The old morning and evening peaks can still provide a biological foundation onto which household events are added. Breakfast often arrives during the first active period. People return from work, prepare dinner, or begin playing with their cats during the second. An evening burst of running through the hallway may occur when an internal rise in activity meets a home that has suddenly become lively again. The cat's schedule has therefore been shaped by two kinds of opportunity. Twilight once offered changing prey conditions and cooler movement. Domestic life adds bowls, toys, warm rooms, and familiar people at times chosen by humans. That arrangement allows the ancient rhythm to remain visible, while shifting toward the hours when a particular household becomes most rewarding. That flexibility became especially useful when small wildcats began spending more time near the first farming communities. Roughly 10,000 years ago, people in the Near East were settling in villages and storing harvested grain close to their homes. Wheat and barley could remain useful for months when kept dry, giving a village food after the growing season had ended. Stored grain also attracted rodents. House mice and other small animals found shelter around walls, baskets, and storage rooms where food was concentrated in one place. Those rodents created a dependable hunting ground for local wildcats. Genetic and archaeological evidence connects the domestic cat mainly to a wildcat lineage often called Felis sylvestris libica. This lineage includes the Near Eastern and North African wildcat, a slim, sand-colored hunter that resembles a striped domestic cat. An individual wildcat willing to approach a settlement could find more prey than one searching across a wide stretch of dry land. Human buildings also offered shade, sheltered corners, and protection from some larger predators. People gained something in return. A cat hunting around grain stores could reduce the number of rodents eating or spoiling valuable food. This relationship developed through what scientists call a commensal pathway. In a commensal pathway, an animal begins using a human-made environment because it offers useful resources. Close contact grows before people begin tightly controlling breeding or selecting animals for particular physical traits. Early farmers probably did not gather wildcats and train them through an organized breeding program. Tolerance increased gradually. Cats that remained calm enough to hunt near houses received access to concentrated prey. People who allowed those hunters to stay gained some protection for their stored food. Over many generations, natural selection favored animals that could manage human voices, fires, movement, and unfamiliar structures without fleeing immediately. Human choices also mattered. People may have protected useful cats, shared scraps, or carried them into new settlements. Domestication emerged from repeated decisions made by both species within the same changing environment. One of the clearest early signs of this relationship comes from Shilurikambos, an ancient settlement on the island of Cyprus. Archaeologists working there uncovered a human burial dating to roughly 9,500 years ago. A cat had been intentionally placed nearby, about 40 centimeters from the person. The bodies were arranged in separate but closely connected burial spaces. Cats were not native to Cyprus. The animal's ancestors had to reach the island from the mainland across open water. That journey required human transport, probably in a small boat carrying people, tools, food, and other animals. The burial does not show that the cat slept on a bed or answered to a name. Its placement still reveals a deliberate relationship. Someone had valued the animal enough to transport cats to the island, keep one near the settlement, and place it beside a person after death. By that point, cats had moved beyond being occasional hunters passing through the edge of a village. They had entered the human social environment. Reliable places remained central to the arrangement. A grain store attracted rodents day after day. A sheltered wall offered a familiar resting site. Human activity followed repeated patterns around food preparation, storage, and sleep. Cats capable of learning those patterns could arrive when hunting conditions were best and retreat when the settlement became too busy. The modern kitchen continues this older relationship in a changed form. Rodents have been replaced by prepared meals in many homes. A cupboard, refrigerator, or automatic feeder now concentrates food in one dependable location. The person controlling that resource usually approaches it according to a daily schedule. A cat waiting near the feeding station is using a strategy with deep historical roots. Human settlements have provided predictable patches of food and shelter for thousands of years. Success near people also required adjustment. Villages differed in their working hours, climate, building design, and daily noise. Cats that could shift their activity toward local opportunity had an advantage over animals tied to one narrow schedule. That mixture of predictability and flexibility still shapes the routines of domestic cats today. A useful daily rhythm must remain adjustable. If every cat became active at one fixed hour, the species would struggle whenever food, shelter, or human activity appeared at a different time. Domestic cats instead combine a broad biological pattern with a remarkable ability to shift their behavior toward opportunity. The 14 indoor cats tracked in the 2019 study showed this balance clearly. As a group, they became more active during the morning and evening. Their feeding followed a similar two-peaked pattern. Individual cats still differed greatly in when they moved, how far they traveled, and how strongly they followed each peak. Some were more active during darkness. Others concentrated more movement within the light period. The researchers could not place the entire group into one simple category such as nocturnal or daytime active. A bimodal rhythm, with one rise in the morning and another in the evening, described the shared pattern more accurately. Variation between animals remained an important part of the result. This flexibility allows the same species to live in a quiet apartment, a busy family home, a farm building, or an outdoor territory. Each setting offers resources at different times. A farm cat may increase its movement when rodents emerge around stored feed. An indoor cat may wake when a person returns from work, and others may spend much of the afternoon resting because the home stays empty until evening. The underlying daily clock still influences these animals. Local conditions help decide where the strongest activity peaks settle. The seasonal study involving 6 indoor cats showed how quickly human activity could become part of that timing system. Researchers followed the cats for 3 weeks during each season, while natural daylight changed around them. Movement and feeding continued to follow rhythms close to 24 hours. The cats also became more active when staff entered and interacted with them. Food consumption rose around those periods as well. This happened during winter, spring, summer, and autumn. The amount and timing of daylight shifted across the year, while human contact repeatedly pulled activity toward recognizable hours. A caretaker entering the room could therefore amplify a period of movement that had already begun. Regular feeding could create a second pull. Controlled experiments have compared cats receiving food once per day with cats receiving several meals. Changing the number and timing of meals redistributed activity across the light period, the dark period, and the hours before food arrived. Cats offered several scheduled meals developed several periods of pre-meal movement. Animals receiving one daily meal concentrated more of that anticipation around a single point. The total amount of food could remain the same while the pattern of activity changed. Several timing systems are working together in such cases. Natural light adjusts the central daily clock. Internal rhythms create broad periods of sleepiness, movement, and appetite. Scheduled food gives particular hours greater value. Human voices, footsteps, and contact can strengthen activity at the times when people become available. These influences sometimes agree, morning light, rising appetite, and the sound of a familiar person entering the kitchen may all point toward breakfast. At other times, they pull in different directions. A person working a night shift may offer food, while the outdoor world remains dark. Artificial lighting can extend the active evening. A weekend schedule may delay the household by several hours, even though sunrise arrives as usual. Cats can learn these changes, although the adjustment may take repeated experience. The biological clock does not instantly jump to a new position. Learned associations also need enough new examples to replace the older pattern. During the transition, a cat may continue appearing at the former mealtime or waking its person according to the previous routine. Each successful repetition gradually gives the new schedule more predictive weight. This is why routine following reflects adaptability. The cat builds stable expectations from repeated events, then revises those expectations when the surrounding pattern changes often enough. Some cats adjust within days. Others need longer, especially after years of living with the same timing. Age, health, temperament, and the size of the schedule change can all affect the process. To shift so effectively, a cat must detect much more than sunrise or the final appearance of food. An ordinary house contains dozens of smaller signals, each revealing how far the day has progressed. A cat does not need to watch a clock when the house itself changes from hour to hour. Morning often begins before any person stands up. The light near a window grows stronger. Water moves through pipes inside the walls. A heating system may click on after the temperature drops overnight. Outside, birds begin calling as the sky brightens. Inside the bedroom, blankets shift, and a sleeping person's breathing changes as waking approaches. Any one of these events may seem too small to matter. Their value comes from repetition. A furnace that starts at nearly the same time each morning can become part of the background pattern. The sound of water in one pipe may mean that someone has entered the bathroom. A laptop closing in the evening may often be followed by footsteps, a meal, or play. These examples are reasonable applications of how cats learn, although each individual household sound has not been tested in its own experiment. What matters is the dependable relationship between the signal and what usually follows. Cats can hear frequencies far above the upper limit of human hearing. Their ears also rotate toward a sound, allowing them to locate small changes without moving the rest of the body. A faint click from another room may therefore receive an immediate response. Sometimes the only visible sign is one ear turning several degrees toward the source. That small movement can reveal that the sound has been noticed and identified. Researchers demonstrated this kind of quiet discrimination in a 2013 experiment involving 20 domestic cats. Each cat heard recordings while the speaker remained out of sight. 3 unfamiliar voices were played first. The owner's voice followed. 15 of the cats became sufficiently accustomed to the repeated unfamiliar voices for the comparison to be measured clearly. Their reactions decreased as the unknown voices continued. When the familiar owner spoke, their responses rose again. Most cats did not run toward the speaker or answer with a loud meow. They turned an ear, moved the head, or briefly shifted their attention. Those restrained reactions showed that the owner's voice carried different information from the voices of strangers. A familiar human sound can therefore become more than general household noise. It can identify who is present and suggest which activities are likely to follow. One person's voice may often come before breakfast. Another may be linked with evening play or the opening of a particular door. Scent adds another layer. Coffee releases hundreds of airborne chemical compounds as hot water passes through the grounds. Cooking changes the smell of a kitchen long before a meal is placed on the floor. Shoes bring outdoor scents into the home. An open door carries cooler air, moisture, soil odors, and traces left by nearby animals. Cats possess a large area of smell-sensitive tissue inside the nose, and scent can remain in a room after a sound has ended. Temperature also marks the passing day. A radiator warms one resting place after the heating begins. Sunlight raises the temperature of a windowsill as it crosses the room. An oven or dishwasher can create a warm patch that appears at a regular part of the evening. The cat's paws, whisker follicles, and skin detect contact and air movement, adding physical information to what the eyes and ears have already gathered. The nervous system combines these streams through a process called multisensory integration. Information from several senses is brought together, so the animal can make a more reliable judgment. A pale window may suggest early morning. Familiar breathing and shifting blankets increase that likelihood. Footsteps, followed by the owner's voice, make waking even more certain. Hunger supplies an internal signal that fits the same pattern. These clues form a hierarchy. Early signals indicate that an event may be approaching. Later signals carry greater predictive weight because they occur closer to the outcome. The first bird call does not guarantee breakfast. The kitchen cupboard opening makes food much more likely. A bowl touching the counter narrows the remaining time to seconds. This helps explain why a resting cat may appear inactive, while its ears continue turning and its eyes briefly open. Attention does not always produce dramatic movement. Much of the day can be monitored through small, energy-saving responses. The house is constantly providing information about light, identity, location, and likely events. Recognizing each clue is useful. Prediction becomes much more precise when the cat also learns the order in which those clues normally arrive. A cupboard door begins as an ordinary sound. The hinge moves, the latch clicks, and the wood meets the frame. When that sound is repeatedly followed by food, its meaning changes for the cat. The cupboard begins to predict something valuable. This is a basic form of classical conditioning. Classical conditioning occurs when a previously neutral cue starts producing a response because it has become linked with an important event. The sound itself does not satisfy hunger. Its value comes from what usually happens a few moments later. After enough repetitions, the cat may lift its head at the first click. A stronger association can bring the animal into the kitchen before the bowl has been filled. Household routines usually contain more than one simple pairing. Morning may begin with an alarm. Movement beneath the blankets follows. The bathroom door opens soon afterward, and footsteps eventually cross the kitchen floor. A cupboard opens near the end of the sequence. Food reaches the bowl only after several earlier events have already occurred. Learning can connect these events through a process called associative chaining. In an associative chain, one cue predicts the cue that normally follows it. the alarm may predict that the person will sit up. Movement from the bed may predict the bathroom. Footsteps leaving that room may predict activity in the kitchen. Each link carries the cat closer to the final outcome. Earlier cues usually produce weaker responses because they leave more room for the routine to change. An alarm may sound while the person remains in bed. Bathroom movement can occur during the night without leading to food. Footsteps toward the kitchen are more useful, especially when they happen near the usual feeding period. The cupboard sound carries even greater predictive value because it occurs close to the meal. A bowl touching the counter may cause the strongest response of all. The cat's behavior can therefore rise in stages. An ear turns toward the alarm. The head lifts when the person stands. The body leaves its resting place once footsteps move down the hallway. By the time the cupboard opens, the cat may be waiting in its usual position. No spoken plan is required for this sequence to guide behavior. Learning changes the strength of expectation attached to each cue. Signals that repeatedly occur close to an outcome gain more influence. Unreliable signals remain weaker because they often lead nowhere. The relationship can also change when the routine stops unfolding as expected. Suppose the cupboard opens and a glass is removed. The cat may approach, pause, and then discover that no food appears. Scientists call the gap between an expected outcome and the actual result a prediction error. Prediction error helps the nervous system update what a cue means. One missed meal after a cupboard sound will not erase months of learning. Well-established associations can survive occasional exceptions. The cat may simply become slightly less certain during the next similar event. Repeated changes have a greater effect. If food is moved to another cupboard and the old door opens many times without a meal, the old sound gradually loses predictive value. The new cupboard gains importance as its sound becomes the more dependable signal. Timing matters as well. A cue followed by food within seconds usually forms a stronger connection than one separated from the meal by a long and uncertain delay. This is why the final parts of a household sequence often produce the clearest behavior. Earlier events still contribute, especially when several of them arrive in the familiar order. Research supports the ability of cats to form associations and adjust behavior according to repeated outcomes. A complete human-like understanding of an entire daily schedule has not been demonstrated. The cat does not need to silently describe the sequence as alarm, bathroom, kitchen, and breakfast. Changes in attention, expectation, and response strength can produce the same outward result. What looks like an organized plan may grow from many learned links, each tested against what happens afterward. The cat's routine has now become more than a collection of familiar sensations. It functions as a working model of cause and sequence. The clearest place to watch that invisible model in action is the event powerful enough to change movement, attention, and internal physiology together: the arrival of food. Scheduled food allows that learned pattern to be measured with unusual precision. Researchers call the increase in movement before an expected meal food anticipatory activity. The term describes behavior that begins while the food is still unavailable. A cat may leave a resting place, circle near the feeding area, or make several short trips toward the bowl. Scientists can record those changes without relying only on what a caretaker remembers seeing. One controlled study used 10 adult cats. All 10 were lean, neutered males, which reduced some of the differences that body condition, reproduction, and sex could add to the results. The researchers tested the cats in 2 crossover experiments. A crossover design allows the same animals to experience more than one condition. Each cat can therefore be compared partly with itself, rather than being measured only against a separate group. Before activity was formally recorded, every feeding condition included a 14-day adaptation period. Those 2 weeks gave the cats time to become familiar with the new schedule. The researchers then measured their behavior for 7 days. Each animal wore an Actical activity collar. The device detected movement and stored a new activity count every 15 seconds. Across a full day, that created 5,760 short measurement periods for each cat. Small bursts of movement that might be missed during occasional observation could still appear in the recorded pattern. The feeding schedules varied. During one condition, the cats received the entire day's food in a single meal. Other conditions divided the same daily amount into 2 meals or 4 meals. A further schedule provided a random number of meals, making the distribution of feeding opportunities less uniform. The total energy offered to the cats remained controlled. The basic diet composition also stayed the same. This allowed the researchers to focus on timing and meal structure, rather than comparing different foods or calorie levels. The pattern of movement changed with the schedule. Cats receiving 1 daily meal had lower average activity than cats receiving 4 meals or a random number of meals. The multiple meal schedules created several points during the day when food might be expected. Movement gathered around those repeated access times. The researchers examined the 2 hours leading up to each meal. Cats eating once per day had less total food anticipatory activity than the cats receiving several meals. This difference makes sense when the full schedule is considered. The once daily cats had 1 main period of anticipation. Cats receiving 4 meals could show 4 separate rises in pre-meal movement. Their day contained more temporal anchors. Each anchor gave activity another place to gather. A feeding time, therefore, does more than mark the moment when calories enter the body. Repeated delivery gives part of the day special predictive value. As the expected hour approaches, internal hunger signals may grow stronger. Environmental cues begin matching previous feeding days. Movement shifts toward locations associated with the meal. This pattern should remain separate from every behavior commonly described as begging. A cat waiting quietly beside a bowl may be showing anticipation. Persistent meowing can involve a different learning process when vocalizing has repeatedly caused a person to provide food. Pawing at a bedroom door may also become stronger if it sometimes makes the owner rise early. Those behaviors can influence the human and change the outcome. Food anticipatory activity can still occur under a fixed schedule, even when no person responds to a meow or opens a door. The study does not establish one perfect feeding frequency for every household cat. Age, medical needs, diet type, body condition, medication, and daily care all affect what schedule may be appropriate. The experiment answers a narrower and more useful scientific point. Changing when the same food arrived changed when and how much the cats moved. The structure of access reorganized the day. A meal became a dependable reference point around which behavior could form. The cat beside the bowl now fits a measurable pattern seen through thousands of 15-second recordings. Its early arrival reflects a schedule learned well enough to shift movement before the resource appears. That visible movement is only the outer part of the response. Repeated feeding times also organize appetite signals and metabolic activity inside the body, bringing learned expectation into contact with digestion and energy use. Inside the body, the expected meal is accompanied by changes that cannot be seen from across the room. Hunger develops through several systems working together. The stomach sends information about fullness and emptiness. The bloodstream carries signals about glucose, amino acids, and recently absorbed nutrients. Hormones released by the digestive tract communicate with the brain about when food has arrived and how much energy may be available. Experience adds another influence. When meals occur at dependable times, the body can begin organizing appetite and digestion around those repeated hours. Researchers examined this process in 8 adult cats by comparing 2 feeding schedules. Each cat received the same total amount of canned food per day. Under one schedule, the entire portion arrived at 8 in the morning. Under the other, the food was divided into 4 equal meals, served at 8, 11:30, 3, and 6:30. The experiment was arranged across 3 periods, each lasting 21 days. This design allowed the researchers to observe the cats under both feeding patterns while giving them time to adjust. On day 14 of each period, blood sampling continued across a full 24 hours. 2 samples were collected while the cats were fasting. 11 more were taken after feeding began. Those samples showed how nutrients and appetite-related hormones change before and after meals. One hormone measured was ghrelin. Ghrelin is often associated with hunger and can help signal that the body is ready to seek food. Insulin was also measured because it helps move glucose from the bloodstream into cells after nutrients are absorbed. Other measurements included amino acids, which are the smaller building blocks released when protein is digested. The researchers also recorded several hormones linked with fullness and digestion, including peptide YY and glucagon-like peptide 1. Their names matter less than their shared role. They help the digestive system communicate that food has arrived and influence how appetite changes after eating. The cats receiving 4 meals were more active overall. They also showed more movement during the light part of the day. Measured energy expenditure, however, did not differ significantly between the schedules. Greater recorded movement did not automatically produce a clear increase in the total energy used. The once-daily meal created a different pattern. Cats eating all their food at 8 in the morning showed larger post-meal changes in several appetite-related signals. Their blood also contained larger rises in some amino acids after the meal, because the full daily amount of protein entered the digestive system at one time. 4 smaller meals spread those changes across several points in the day. The once-daily schedule concentrated them into one larger event. Neither pattern produced a simple result in which one schedule improved every measurement. Meal frequency changed the timing and size of different responses. Some fullness signals became stronger after the larger meal. Several eating opportunities produced more periods of activity and a more distributed flow of nutrients. The researchers therefore interpreted the findings cautiously. A feeding schedule can alter satiety, movement, and metabolic timing in different ways, without creating one universal rule for every cat. Health conditions may also change what schedule is suitable. A kitten, an older cat, and an adult receiving medication may have very different feeding needs. What the experiment does reveal is that a meal schedule reaches far beyond the bowl. Repeated timing helps organize when the cat becomes active. Digestion then creates its own sequence of chemical signals after food arrives. Learned sounds and locations become linked with internal changes that have occurred at similar times on many previous days. A cat hearing the familiar cupboard may already be approaching a usual period of hunger. The kitchen cue and the body's condition support the same prediction. That agreement makes the routine especially powerful. Expectation is stronger when information from the room matches information coming from the stomach and bloodstream. Food can organize several hours of a cat's day through anticipation, eating, digestion, and the gradual return of appetite. The person providing that food also becomes part of the pattern. Cats can learn highly specific information about who opens the cupboard, who controls a favorite door, and who usually begins play or quiet contact at particular times. Once a person becomes linked with feeding, doors, play, or rest, their identity can carry predictive meaning of its own. The sound of a familiar voice does more than announce that someone is nearby. It can tell the cat which person is present and suggest what that individual is likely to do. Researchers tested this ability in 2013 with recordings played while each speaker remained out of sight. 20 household cats first heard 3 unfamiliar people calling them. The owner's voice followed after the cats had become used to the unknown voices. 15 cats showed a clear enough drop in response during the unfamiliar recordings for the researchers to measure what happened next. When the owner spoke, attention increased again. Most reactions were small. An ear turned toward the speaker. The head shifted, or the cat briefly changed its posture. Very few animals approached the sound or answered loudly. Those subtle movements still showed that the familiar voice belonged in a different category from the voices of strangers. Volume alone could not explain the response. The recordings carried information about who was speaking. Within a home, that distinction can become part of a daily routine. One person may usually prepare breakfast. Someone else may open the balcony door or begin play after dinner. A third household member might provide quiet contact while reading in the evening. These examples vary from home to home, yet they show how identity can become tied to a particular outcome. A cat hearing the breakfast person in the hallway may form a different expectation than it would after hearing another family member at the same hour. Familiar people also occupy predictable places. A person who works at a desk may remain in one room through much of the afternoon. Another may spend the early morning moving between the bedroom, bathroom, and kitchen. Repeated exposure gives the cat information about where each individual is likely to be during different parts of the day. A 2021 experiment examined whether cats maintain this kind of location-based expectation. The cats first heard their owner calling from a speaker in one position. A second recording then came from another speaker placed elsewhere in the room. When the owner's voice suddenly appeared in the new location, the cat showed stronger signs of surprise. The effect resembled an unseen person moving across the room far faster than normal movement would allow. Researchers described the situation as though the owner had been teleported. Comparable non-social sounds did not produce the same pattern. The result suggests that the cats were tracking more than a familiar noise. They appeared to hold an expectation about where the familiar person should still be. The researchers called this sociospatial cognition. The term refers to keeping track of another individual's likely location, even when that individual cannot currently be seen. This ability would be useful in a household where people move resources and control access to different spaces. A voice from the bedroom may signal that the person has just awakened. The same voice from the kitchen carries a different set of possibilities. Footsteps, scent, clothing sounds, and direction of movement can add further detail. Identity combines with location and action to create a compound signal. A compound signal contains several pieces of information at once. The cat recognizes the individual, estimates where that person is, and compares the present action with events that have followed before. Breakfast becomes more likely when the usual feeder walks toward the food cupboard. Play becomes easier to predict when another person sits near the toy basket at the familiar evening hour. This does not require the cat to understand anyone's plan in human terms. Repeated pairings allow particular people to become moving landmarks within the daily routine. The person carries a familiar voice, scent, walking rhythm, and history of past actions from room to room. The cat's schedule therefore includes specific individuals rather than a general category called human. Much of this knowledge develops without formal training. No one needs to teach the cat which voice belongs with breakfast or who usually opens the bedroom door. Ordinary repetition provides lesson after lesson, while daily life continues around it. How much can a cat learn simply by being present while the same people, sounds, and events keep appearing together? Daily life provides cats with thousands of chances to connect one event with another. This kind of learning can happen without treats, commands, or planned training sessions. Scientists call it incidental learning. Useful information is absorbed while the animal is simply living among familiar people, sounds, and other animals. A study published in 2022 explored whether cats could connect the spoken names of familiar companions with their faces. The researchers tested 48 cats. 29 lived in cat cafes, where many cats shared the same public space. 19 were household cats living with at least 2 other cats. Each animal first heard a recording of a familiar cat's name. A photograph then appeared on a screen. During some trials, the photograph showed the cat whose name had just been spoken. Other trials showed the face of a different familiar cat. The cats had never been formally trained to perform this task. No one taught them to touch the correct picture or choose between 2 buttons. Researchers instead measured how long the cats looked at the screen. Looking time can reveal what scientists call expectancy violation. When an animal sees something that conflicts with an established expectation, it may pause and inspect the surprising result for longer. The household cats looked longer when a familiar name was followed by the wrong face. That extra attention suggested that the spoken sound and the expected individual had already become connected in memory. The mismatch interrupted a relationship the cats had learned during ordinary life. The cafe cats did not show the same clear pattern. A cafe may contain many voices, visitors, and animals moving through the same shared rooms. Names may be spoken less consistently, or several cats may be nearby whenever one name is called. A private home can provide a cleaner pattern. One family repeatedly says a particular name, while the same cat is present, approached, fed, or handled. Over months or years, those pairings may become easier to separate. The result does not mean cats understand names exactly as humans understand them. The evidence supports an association between a familiar spoken label and a familiar individual. That association is already enough to create an expectation. A different experiment published in 2024 showed how quickly cats may begin forming new links between sounds and images. 31 cats were shown 2 pictures on a screen. Each picture was paired with its own meaningless spoken label. The labels were invented sounds, so the cats had no previous reason to connect them with anything. Many of the cats became used to the pairings after only 4 trials. The total exposure to each sound and image combination was about 9 seconds. Afterward, the researchers switched the combinations. A sound that had accompanied one picture now played with the other. The cats looked longer during these changed trials, suggesting that the new arrangement violated a recently formed expectation. 9 seconds of exposure does not create a lasting vocabulary. The researchers were careful to describe the result as rapid association formation, rather than proof that cats learn words exactly as people do. The experiment still reveals how little repetition may be needed before a pattern begins to matter. Inside a home, exposure is rarely limited to 9 seconds. A cat may hear the same person's name spoken hundreds of times. The sound of a key may repeatedly occur before the front door opens. A certain phone alarm may precede medication, while a different tone appears before the person leaves for work. Faces, voices, objects, and places keep arriving in familiar combinations. Information from different senses can become joined through cross-modal association. Cross-modal means that the connection crosses from one sense to another. A spoken name heard through the ears can become linked with a face seen through the eyes. The sound of a food container can become linked with its smell and the location where it appears. These connections allow the cat to notice when a familiar combination changes. They also let behavior begin earlier. Once the first reliable clue appears, the cat may no longer need to wait for the final event before moving. A familiar action can become useful before its final result appears. A person closes a laptop near the end of the evening. The screen goes dark, the lid meets the keyboard, and a chair shifts against the floor. After many repetitions, a nearby cat may rise from its resting place before the person has stood up. Closing the laptop has often been followed by movement toward the kitchen, the bedroom, or a cupboard containing toys. The sound now carries information about what is likely to happen within the next minute. Prediction becomes valuable when it changes behavior early enough to improve the outcome. A cat that waits until food reaches the bowl may arrive after another animal has taken the nearest position. Leaving a bed when the first reliable cue appears allows the cat to reach the feeding area before the resource becomes available. The physical cost is small. Walking across one room requires little energy, while arriving early may provide easier access to food, attention, an open door, or a preferred resting place. Anticipatory behavior can take several forms. A cat may turn its ears toward a sound and remain still, while gathering more information. Stronger evidence may cause it to stand, change rooms, or wait beside a familiar object. Some cats pace between the person and the expected destination. Others vocalize or walk a few steps ahead, then look back to see whether the human is following. These actions vary between individuals because each cat has a different learning history. A quiet animal may express expectation by sitting beside the correct door. A more social cat may touch the person's leg or lead them down the hallway. Research has measured parts of this process under controlled conditions. In feeding experiments, activity collars recorded increased movement before scheduled meals. That rise began while the food was still unavailable, showing that behavior could shift in advance of the outcome. Experiments using hidden speakers also found that cats formed expectations about where a familiar owner was located. When the voice suddenly came from an unexpected part of the room, the cat showed greater surprise, suggesting that they had been tracking the unseen person's likely position. Other studies found that cats looked longer when a familiar name was paired with the wrong face, or when a newly learned sound appeared with the wrong image. Those longer looks revealed that the animals had formed expectations about which pieces of information belonged together. Taken together, these findings support a broader interpretation of routine inside the home. Cats can respond before scheduled resources arrive. They can keep track of an unseen familiar person. They also notice when an expected combination has changed. A household gives these abilities far more opportunities to work together than a short experiment can capture. Researchers have not reconstructed every cue used by a cat, waiting near one particular bedroom door. The animal may be responding to the time of day, a change in breathing, movement under the blankets, or sounds from elsewhere in the building. Several clues may be contributing at once. The strength of each clue can be understood as a change in probability. A laptop closing may slightly increase the chance that the person will stand. The chair moving adds more evidence. Footsteps toward the kitchen make the expected destination clearer. At some point, the likely benefit of moving becomes greater than the small cost of leaving a comfortable place. The cat acts before certainty arrives. This is anticipatory decision-making. The nervous system uses previous experience to estimate what will probably happen and selects a response while there is still time for that response to matter. Such behavior can look purposeful without requiring a human-style plan. The cat does not need to picture the next 5 minutes in words. Learned probabilities are enough to guide movement toward the place where past routines have usually ended. Early action also creates a new effect within the household. The person may notice the waiting cat and open the door sooner. A glance toward the food bowl may prompt breakfast. Walking toward the toy basket may begin a play session. The prediction has now influenced the event it predicted, allowing the cat's behavior to become part of the routine itself. The cat's early movement can become a signal that changes what the person does. A quiet wait beside the bowl may bring breakfast sooner. A paw placed on the bedroom door may cause someone to sit up. Repeated outcomes can strengthen both the cat's behavior and the human response. Scientists describe this kind of learning as operant conditioning. Operant conditioning occurs when the consequence of an action changes how often that action happens in the future. A cat meows near the kitchen. The person opens a container and provides food. Because the meow produced a valued result, the cat becomes more likely to use the same behavior again under similar conditions. This is positive reinforcement. The word positive refers to something being added after the behavior. Food, attention, access to a room, or the start of play can each serve as the added reward. The person is learning during the same exchange. A cat may continue vocalizing while breakfast is delayed. When the person finally fills the bowl, the sound stops. Relief from the persistent meowing can make the person more likely to feed the cat sooner on another morning. Both participants have changed one another's behavior. The cat learns which signal influences the person. The person learns which response quickly settles the situation. Occasional success can make the pattern especially persistent. This is called intermittent reinforcement. The reward appears after some attempts and remains absent after others. A cat that receives food every time it scratches a door can learn the relationship quickly. A cat that succeeds only once in a while may continue trying for a long period, because the next attempt could still work. Human habits often create this uneven pattern. One family member ignores the meowing. Someone else gives the cat a small snack. A third person occasionally opens the door after several minutes of scratching. The outcome remains uncertain, which can encourage repeated attempts. Shared play offers another clear example of cats influencing the timing of an activity. A study published in 2023 surveyed 924 owners, about 1,154 cats that fetched objects. The animals brought back toys such as small balls, soft mice, and crumpled pieces of paper after a person threw them. According to the owners, 94.4% of the cats began fetching without explicit training. No planned lesson had taught most of them to retrieve. The behavior appeared during ordinary interaction and then became a repeated activity. Owners also reported that the cats usually had a strong role in controlling the session. Cats initiated fetching more often than the people did. They also ended the activity more often, sometimes by keeping the object, carrying it elsewhere, or simply walking away. The research came from an owner survey rather than a controlled laboratory experiment. That means the results depended on people accurately describing what happened in their homes. Even with that limitation, the large sample offers a useful picture of feline agency. The cats were active participants in deciding when a familiar shared routine began and how long it continued. A cat dropping a toy beside a person creates a cue. The person responds by throwing it. The returning object encourages another throw. Each response becomes the consequence of the other participant's action. This two-way process is called reciprocal conditioning. Reciprocal means that influence travels in both directions. The cat's behavior changes what the person does, and the person's response changes what the cat is likely to do later. Feeding routines can develop through the same loop. A cat waits near the cupboard at a familiar time. The person notices and begins preparing food. The early appearance is rewarded because the meal follows. The person also starts using the waiting cat as a reminder that feeding time has arrived. After many mornings, it may become difficult to identify which participant is following the other. Neither species needed to design the full pattern in advance. Small exchanges accumulated through repetition. A glance led to movement. A vocal signal brought a response, and successful outcomes made the same behaviors more likely to return. Over time, these individual moments settle into a dependable daily rhythm shared by cat and person. Repeated exchanges gradually spread across the rest of the day. A cat may approach when a person sits in a familiar chair, then leave once the person begins typing or speaking on the phone. Later, the person may pause work after noticing the cat waiting nearby. Each participant learns when contact is likely to succeed and when the other is occupied. Researchers studying cat-human relationships describe these interactions as bidirectional. Influence moves in both directions. Cats approach, withdraw, initiate contact, and end it. People make the same choices. A person may call the cat, offer a hand, or create space on a chair. The cat can accept the invitation, remain nearby without touching, or walk into another room. Over time, these small decisions produce a pattern unique to that pair. One cat may seek close contact during the early morning. Another may prefer to sit several feet away while its person works. Some cats arrive soon after a person lies down at night, while others wait until the room has been quiet for half an hour. These differences grow from the history of each relationship. A typical workday provides many chances for coordination. The alarm sounds and breakfast is served. Shoes, keys, and an opening door may signal that the person is about to leave. Once the home becomes quiet, the cat may settle into a longer rest period. Domestic cats often sleep between 12 and 16 hours across a day, although that sleep is divided into many separate periods. A quiet home gives those rest periods room to expand. The pattern changes when the person returns. A key enters the lock. The door opens. Outdoor air moves into the hallway, and familiar footsteps cross the floor. The cat may wake, stretch, and approach, because this sequence has often led to food, play, or attention. During an evening spent at a desk, the cat continues testing the person's availability. An approach made during a phone call may receive little response. The same approach after the laptop closes may lead to several minutes of contact. Repeated outcomes teach the cat which periods are most promising. The person adjusts as well. A chair may be moved slightly to make room. A play session may begin before dinner, because the cat is usually active then. Bedtime may be delayed for a minute while the cat finishes eating or settles into a preferred place. None of these adjustments needs to be planned. They accumulate because both individuals remember what worked on earlier days. Weekends can alter the details without removing the larger structure. The alarm may remain silent, and the person may stay in bed longer. Breakfast still arrives during the morning. Evening lights dim at roughly the usual part of the day, and familiar sleeping places become available again. Broad anchors help the cat recognize the shape of the schedule, even when individual events move by an hour or two. Mutual adjustment can also reduce failed attempts at interaction. A cat that learns when a person is available does not need to approach constantly. The person who recognizes the cat's usual active periods can offer play when the animal is most likely to respond. Fewer approaches end in rejection, and fewer interruptions occur at difficult moments. This coordination should not be mistaken for exact copying. A cat sleeping while a person sleeps does not prove that the animal has deliberately adopted the full human schedule. Internal rhythms, light, comfort, and household quiet may all contribute. The important pattern lies in repeated adjustment. Each individual becomes better at predicting the other's availability. Shared routine is one quiet way a relationship becomes organized. Meals, departures, returns, and periods of rest begin fitting together through hundreds of ordinary days. Time alone does not shape that arrangement. The physical home changes with it. A chair becomes valuable when a person sits there. A doorway matters when it opens, and a room may feel available only during certain hours. That changing value becomes easy to see in a familiar afternoon resting place. A chair beside the window may feel ordinary through most of the morning. Once sunlight reaches the fabric, its surface warms several degrees above the surrounding room. The cat may arrive shortly before the sunbeam fully crosses the seat, guided by light, warmth, and many earlier afternoons spent there. A place can therefore gain importance at one hour and lose it at another. The same pattern appears throughout a home. A hallway that is busy before school or work may become quiet after the front door closes. The bedroom may remain unavailable through the day, then open when the household begins preparing for sleep. Near mealtimes, the kitchen fills with footsteps, food smells, and the sounds of cupboards or bowls. Each location has its own changing mixture of access, comfort, activity, and risk. Cats are skilled at learning where resources can be found. In a stable home, they can also learn when those locations are most useful. This becomes especially important when more than one cat shares the same rooms. Two cats may have access to the same water bowl on paper. Their actual experience can be very different if one animal often rests beside the doorway leading to it. Open fighting is not required for conflict to affect access. A fixed stare may be enough to make another cat pause. An earlier chase can give a narrow hallway a lasting sense of risk. One cat sitting between a litter tray and the rest of the room may quietly discourage another from passing. This behavior is sometimes called resource blocking. The resource remains physically present, although another animal's position makes reaching it uncomfortable or unsafe. A cautious cat may respond by waiting. After the more confident cat leaves, the route opens again. Repeated success at that quieter hour can create a dependable time window for drinking, eating, using the litter tray, or approaching a person. The pattern may look fussy from a human point of view. For the cat, it can reflect an accurate history of when access has worked. Feline environmental guidelines place strong importance on separating key resources in multi-cat homes. Food and water can be offered in different locations. Litter trays should be spread out rather than grouped so closely that one cat can control the route to all of them. Resting places, scratching surfaces, and safe hiding areas also become more useful when each animal has several ways to reach them. These recommendations fit within 5 broad environmental needs. A cat benefits from having a secure place where it can withdraw. Important resources should be available in several separated locations. Daily life should include chances to play and perform parts of hunting behavior. Positive human interaction works best when it is predictable and responsive to the cat's signals. The sensory environment should also respect feline hearing, smell, vision, and sensitivity to sudden disturbance. Together, these features reduce the number of situations in which one narrow path or one crowded room controls access to everything important. Time still remains part of the arrangement. A shy cat may use an elevated perch after children leave for school. Another may drink from a fountain only after the more active cat settles for the afternoon. A third may approach its person late at night when the room is quiet and no competing animal is nearby. Scientists have not directly demonstrated a complete internal time map showing every room and hour in a household. The idea is a careful interpretation of several established abilities. Cats learn spatial layouts. They remember repeated outcomes. They track the movements of familiar individuals and adjust behavior around access to resources. When those abilities work together, location and timing become difficult to separate. The best chair is useful when the sun reaches it. The safest hallway is valuable when it is empty. A food station becomes approachable when another cat has moved away. Knowing where a resource is saves effort. Knowing when it can be reached safely offers something more important: a degree of control over what happens next. Reaching a resource at the right moment gives a cat more than convenience. It reduces uncertainty. Uncertainty forces an animal to monitor a wider range of possibilities. A sudden footstep may mean someone is passing through, approaching to handle the cat, or blocking the nearest route away. When the outcome remains unclear, the nervous system has to stay ready for several different responses. That readiness uses energy. Muscles remain prepared to move. Attention stays focused on the surroundings, and rest becomes lighter. A predictable home narrows those possibilities. The cat learns which doorway remains open, where a quiet resting place can be found, and when food usually becomes available. Familiar patterns make the environment easier to interpret. Feline environmental guidelines describe routine, familiarity, and predictability as important parts of a cat's ability to cope. Coping means adjusting successfully to the conditions around the animal. A cat that understands its surroundings can choose a useful response before pressure becomes intense. Safe places are central to this process. An elevated shelf, enclosed bed, or cardboard box can offer shelter from movement below. Height allows the cat to watch a room while remaining harder to approach. An enclosed space reduces the number of directions from which another animal or person can appear. The value of these locations increases when access remains dependable. A hiding place loses much of its purpose if a dog can block the entrance or a person regularly reaches inside and removes the cat. Separated resources provide similar protection. Food, water, litter trays, scratching surfaces, and resting areas become easier to use when one narrow route does not control access to all of them. In a multi-cat home, several feeding stations can allow each animal to approach without passing close to a competitor. Choice gives the cat control over its own response. Control in this setting means access to meaningful options. The cat can approach a familiar person, remain at a distance, climb to a perch, or retreat into a safe space. Handling becomes easier to tolerate when warning signals appear first, and release remains possible. A carrier left open in a quiet room gives the animal time to inspect it. The same carrier brought out seconds before a car journey may predict sudden capture. Predictability and choice work together. A stable routine helps the cat estimate what is likely to happen. Available options allow it to decide how to respond. Together, these features reduce the need for constant defensive preparation. A person who sits in the same chair each evening may create a dependable opportunity for contact. The cat can approach when it wants attention and leave when the interaction has lasted long enough. Respecting that departure teaches the animal that withdrawal works. Future approaches may become easier because contact no longer carries the risk of being held in place. Routine also helps with events the cat may find difficult. Nail trimming, medication, or travel can become more manageable when the steps remain clear and the animal receives time to prepare. A familiar mat, a repeated handling sequence, or a reward afterward can make the event easier to predict. The unpleasant part may still remain unpleasant. Repetition alone does not automatically create comfort. A frightening event that occurs every day can produce reliable fear. Useful routines combine understandable signals with safety, choice, and outcomes the cat can manage. This gives everyday behavior a deeper meaning. Waiting beside a doorway may reflect knowledge that the route will soon open. Resting on a high shelf may preserve a dependable view and escape path. Approaching at one particular hour may occur because earlier interactions at that time have been calm and successful. The cat's attachment to routine can support a sense of competence within the home. Familiar patterns tell the animal where resources appear, when social contact is available, and which actions reliably create space. That stability becomes most visible when the pattern changes without warning, and the cat suddenly loses both prediction and control. A familiar home can become difficult to read when several ordinary signals change at once. A different caretaker may arrive at the usual feeding hour. Meals may move earlier or later. Construction can fill a quiet room with drilling, footsteps, and unfamiliar smells. Visitors may occupy a favorite resting place, while travel or a closed door removes access to part of the cat's normal territory. Even reduced play can matter when it removes an activity that has marked the same part of the day for months. Researchers have observed how these disruptions affect both healthy cats and animals already living with illness. One long-term study followed 12 healthy cats and 20 cats with feline interstitial cystitis for 77 weeks. Feline interstitial cystitis is a painful bladder disorder. Affected cats may urinate frequently, strain in the litter tray, or pass urine outside it. Stress can worsen the condition in some animals, making routine especially important. During the 77-week observation period, 11 weeks contained unusual external events. These included changes in caretakers, altered husbandry routines, and periods with less normal interaction. The researchers recorded what they called sickness behaviors. This category included reduced activity, withdrawal, appetite changes, vomiting, altered elimination, and less social contact. Unusual events increased these behaviors in both groups. Healthy cats showed changes alongside the cats with bladder disease, revealing that disruption could affect animals without a diagnosed illness as well. The risk of eating less increased during weeks containing unusual events. Some cats failed to eliminate within a 24-hour period. Urination or defecation outside the litter tray also became more likely. These signs did not appear in every cat after every change. The pattern emerged across many weeks of observation, showing that instability raised the chance of behavioral and physical disturbance. A shorter experiment examined what happened when several stressors were deliberately combined. For 5 days, cats experienced a changing sequence that included the removal of treats and play sessions. Caretakers were switched. Feeding times changed, and some cats were restrained in carriers. A blood draw added another unfamiliar event. The value of this design came from accumulation. One delayed meal may be manageable. Several changes arriving close together give the animal less time to adjust before the next expectation is broken. The cat must keep updating its predictions. A familiar person is absent. Food arrives at a different hour. Play no longer follows the usual cue, and a carrier appears where rest once occurred. Each mismatch adds work for the nervous system. Attention stays focused on what might happen. Rest may become lighter, while appetite and social behavior can shift. Access to familiar rewards also becomes less dependable. A cat that normally calms itself by climbing to a quiet shelf may lose that option if the room is closed. Another may seek contact from a caretaker who is no longer present. The resulting behavior can look puzzling from the outside. A cat may hide more, leave food unfinished, or become unusually vocal. Litter tray habits may change. These responses can reflect difficulty coping with a pattern that has become unreliable. They should still be interpreted carefully. Stress is only one possible explanation. Reduced appetite can accompany dental pain, digestive illness, kidney disease, or many other medical problems. Changes in urination may signal bladder inflammation, infection, stones, or a blockage. A male cat repeatedly entering the litter tray without producing urine may need urgent veterinary care. New withdrawal, vomiting, or nighttime restlessness can also have physical causes. Calling the behavior protest or stubbornness can hide useful information. A sudden change deserves attention, especially when it lasts, grows stronger, or appears alongside physical symptoms. Routine helps establish the cat's normal pattern, which makes departures from that pattern easier to notice. The same disruption will still affect individuals differently. Health, age, earlier experience, temperament, and the number of competing pressures inside the home all shape how much change a cat can absorb. Individual differences appear even when a group of cats shares the same room, food, and daylight. In the 2019 study that tracked 14 indoor cats, the group showed a broad morning and evening pattern. Within that pattern, some animals traveled farther, became active earlier, or spent more time moving after dark. Others rested through periods when their companions explored. The shared environment produced a recognizable group rhythm, while each cat kept its own version of the day. That variation begins with biology. Age, health, sensory ability, and temperament can all affect when a cat wakes, eats, explores, or seeks contact. Experience then adds another layer. A cat that has lived in the same home for 8 years may have thousands of repetitions supporting its expectations. It knows which person rises first, when the heating starts, and how long the house usually remains empty. A recently adopted cat enters without that history. The rooms are unfamiliar. Household sounds have no established meaning, and the timing of food or attention still has to be learned. During the first days or weeks, its schedule may appear less precise because the useful associations are still forming. Earlier experience also matters. A cat from a quiet adult household may need time to adjust to children leaving for school each morning. An animal accustomed to free access outdoors may initially wake at hours, shaped by weather, prey, and territorial patrols. Indoor cats often receive a larger share of their timing information from people, electric lights, heating systems, and scheduled meals. Cats with outdoor access encounter additional signals from sunrise, rain, temperature, neighboring animals, and the movement of small prey. Physical changes can alter a familiar schedule at any age. Dental pain may reduce interest in breakfast. Arthritis can make a cat hesitate before climbing to a favorite morning perch. Declining hearing may weaken the meaning of an alarm, a cupboard latch, or footsteps in another room. Reduced vision can make movement through a dark hallway slower and more cautious. Urinary disease may lead to repeated nighttime trips to the litter tray. A change that appears behavioral can begin with a body that no longer experiences the routine in the same way. Older cats provide one of the clearest examples. Some develop feline cognitive dysfunction, an age-related decline affecting memory, learning, awareness, and daily organization. Signs can include altered sleep and wake patterns, increased nighttime activity, wandering, house soiling, changed social behavior, or louder vocalization. A cat that once slept quietly until morning may begin moving through the house after midnight. It may seem uncertain about familiar rooms or call out when the household is asleep. These changes can also have other causes, including pain, thyroid disease, high blood pressure, hearing loss, or kidney problems. A new nighttime pattern deserves attention, rather than being treated automatically as failed training. Long-standing habits carry different meaning from sudden changes. A cat that has always preferred eating late in the evening may simply have an individual rhythm shaped by years of experience. A cat that suddenly stops appearing for a dependable meal is showing a departure from its own normal pattern. The comparison that matters most is often between the cat today and the same cat several weeks or months earlier. Schedule precision should not be used as a measure of intelligence. One cat may react to the earliest cue, while another waits until the outcome is nearly certain. A cautious animal may remain still until the food container opens. A more active cat may begin pacing after the first kitchen sound. Both behaviors can be effective responses to different histories and personalities. Routine emerges from one particular nervous system, interacting with one particular environment. A change in hearing, mobility, appetite, social relationships, or household timing can reshape the final pattern. Understanding that variation changes the practical goal. A useful routine provides dependable anchors while allowing the cat to cope when one sound, one person, or 1 hour shifts. A useful routine gives the cat dependable landmarks while leaving room for ordinary change. Those landmarks include regular access to food and water, clean litter trays, comfortable resting places, safe hiding areas, play, and social contact that respects the cat's willingness to participate. Together, they form stable anchors within the day. An anchor describes a dependable outcome rather than one exact ritual performed at one exact second. Dinner can remain reliable when it arrives within a familiar part of the evening. The cat may recognize the fading daylight, activity in the kitchen, and the person who usually prepares the meal. A delay of several minutes leaves the larger pattern intact because several familiar signals still lead toward the same result. This flexibility becomes valuable whenever human life changes. A new job may move breakfast earlier. Travel can bring a temporary caretaker into the home. Daylight saving time shifts clocks by 1 hour in a single night, while the cat's internal rhythm and the outdoor light change more gradually. A new baby, partner, roommate, or animal can also alter which rooms remain quiet and when attention becomes available. Gradual transitions give the cat time to update its expectations. A meal can move by small amounts across several days. A new caretaker can visit while the familiar person is still present. The travel carrier can remain open in a quiet room before the day of a journey, allowing its smell and shape to become part of the normal environment. Where practical, changing one part of the routine while preserving several others keeps the situation easier to interpret. The food may arrive at a new hour, while the bowl, feeding location, and spoken cue remain familiar. Bedtime may shift, while the same resting areas stay available. The cat receives evidence that the household is changing without losing every dependable feature at once. Food puzzles provide another way to combine reliability with variation. These devices hold measured portions of food that the cat must uncover through movement and investigation. Some are simple trays with shallow wells. Others use sliding covers, rolling containers, or openings that release pieces when the object is moved. The cat can search, reach, push, and solve a small physical problem before eating. Veterinary literature describes food puzzles as a form of physical and emotional enrichment because they create opportunities to perform parts of natural foraging behavior. New puzzles work best when introduced gradually. A small amount of easily reached food can help the cat learn how the device responds. The openings can become more challenging after the basic action is familiar. Normal food access should remain available during early learning, so confusion does not turn the new object into a barrier. Automatic feeders can also preserve dependable access while changing the human part of the sequence. A timed feeder may open early in the morning without requiring the person to leave the bed. This can weaken the connection between waking the owner and receiving breakfast. The meal remains predictable, while the final signal comes from the feeder rather than footsteps from the bedroom. One weight management study used a feeder that separated cats and delivered measured portions. Owners found the program easier to follow, and food-seeking behaviors decreased. Overall success improved because portions and access were easier to control. Providing 6 meals instead of 2 did not independently produce faster weight loss, showing again that feeding frequency has no single universal answer. The appropriate schedule depends on age, health, diet, medication, body condition, and veterinary guidance. Resilience grows when an important result can be reached through more than one dependable path. Food may follow the person's routine or a timed feeder. Play can begin with a toy basket, a spoken cue, or the person sitting in a familiar place. Rest remains possible across several safe locations. The cat learns that small changes can occur while the larger structure of safety and access continues. Controlled variation supports that learning. Different toys can appear on different evenings. A food puzzle can change shape. A play session may begin slightly earlier on one day and later on another. The aim is a life that remains understandable, while offering enough variation for the cat to adjust. This balance brings the opening scene into focus. The cat waiting before the alarm is drawing on daylight, body rhythms, learned sequences, hunger, household sounds, and knowledge of a familiar person. Its timing comes from an entire layered system working together. The familiar morning scene now carries many layers. A cat opens its eyes before the alarm, steps across the bed, and waits near the bedroom door. Its timing begins with the brain's central daily clock. Groups of nerve cells produce repeating molecular and electrical cycles that create a framework close to 24 hours. That framework changes the likelihood of sleep, movement, appetite, and small shifts in body temperature across the day. Morning readiness may already be building while the room remains quiet. Light then adjusts the internal rhythm to the world outside. As dawn reaches the retina, the brain receives information about the arrival of a new day. This process, called entrainment, keeps biological time aligned with sunrise, sunset, and the gradual movement of the seasons. Many cats show increased activity around morning and evening. The strength and exact timing of those peaks vary from one animal to another. A cat living with an early riser may shift toward the first hours of daylight. Another may become most active after its person returns home in the evening. Hunger adds information from inside the body. Scheduled feeding can produce measurable activity during the hours before food arrives. Appetite signals, digestion, and metabolic changes become organized around repeated meal times. A cat approaching the kitchen may therefore be responding to both an internal state and a familiar part of the household schedule. The room supplies further evidence. A heating system begins running. Water moves through the pipes, and blankets shift as a sleeping person approaches waking. A bird calls near the window. The floor carries the vibration of the first footsteps. Each cue contributes a little information. Several matching cues can create a prediction far more precise than any one signal could provide alone. The identity of the person also matters. Cats can distinguish a familiar owner's voice from unfamiliar voices, even when the speaker remains out of sight. They can maintain an expectation about where that person is located. A voice that suddenly appears to move across a room can produce surprise because it conflicts with the cat's earlier estimate. Names, faces, spoken sounds, and images can also become connected through ordinary exposure. These associations allow the cat to recognize which person is awake, where that person is moving, and what actions have usually followed before. Sequence gives the information structure. The alarm often comes before movement from the bed. The bathroom door opens before footsteps enter the kitchen. A cupboard sound may be followed by the bowl touching the counter. Through hundreds of repetitions, earlier events gain predictive value. The final cue becomes more powerful because it appears close to the expected outcome. The cat's response shapes the sequence as well. Waiting beside the bowl may remind the person that breakfast is due. A meow can bring attention. A toy placed near a chair may begin a familiar game. When the human responds, the cat's behavior becomes more likely to return. The person also learns which signals lead to feeding, play, or quiet contact. Daily routine grows through this reciprocal reinforcement, with each participant influencing the other. Places acquire their own timing. A chair becomes warm when afternoon sunlight reaches it. A hallway becomes easier to cross when another cat has moved away. The bedroom becomes available at night, while the kitchen gains value around meals. The cat learns where resources are located and when access is most likely to be safe. This knowledge supports coping. Familiarity reduces the number of outcomes that must be monitored at once. Predictable access to food, water, litter, rest, and safe hiding places makes the home easier to navigate. Choice allows the cat to approach, climb, remain nearby, or withdraw. Stable routines can therefore provide both understanding and control. Over hundreds or thousands of ordinary days, the cat learns the shape of life with its person. It learns when the home begins to wake and when the rooms grow empty. It recognizes the return of familiar footsteps and the quiet settling of the evening. The apparent punctuality comes from many overlapping systems, each adding information to the others. The cat has learned the person, the rooms, the light, the sounds, and the dependable order surrounding the clock. What looks like knowledge of a numbered hour is something more closely tied to daily life. It is the learned structure of a shared home, becoming familiar one repeated day at a time.